Man up. Your boxing dream is pathetic. My dad said after canceling my knee surgery, so my golden sister could go vacation in Europe. I lost my shot. Then I stopped being useful and watched them suffer. So here's something nobody tells you about being good at something. People will worship the ground you walk on right up until the moment you actually need their help. Then suddenly, everyone's got other priorities. I, 22 male, was finally turning pro after 14 years in the amateurs. If you don't know what that grind looks like, imagine getting punched in the face for free since age 8. Tournament every weekend. Busted knuckles. Road trips. Skipping normal life. Gym at dawn. Been doing this since dad put me in boxing for discipline. By high school, promoters were watching. Senior year, I won Golden Gloves. Dominic Torres, a Detroit boxing legend who runs a fighter support foundation, handed me the trophy. Coach had me training 6 days a week, up at 4:45 a.m. By evening, my legs were concrete, but the wins kept coming. Pro managers were paying attention. 3 contacted me within 2 weeks. Everything I'd sacrificed since age 8 was finally paying off. Then, on March 12th, during sparring, my right knee exploded. Not the good pop, the kind where your vision whites out. I was pivoting off my back leg when the joint gave out. Hit the canvas hard. Coach was there instantly. I tried standing, collapsed immediately. Sharp, deep, wrong. Sports Medicine Center gave me the initial diagnosis. Knee strain, rest, and ice. But after 3 weeks, the pain got worse. Walking became torture. Stairs impossible. Training out of the question. April 5th, coach drove me to the orthopedic center. Full MRI, mobility tests. Complex meniscus tear with cartilage damage. Bones grinding together. The kind of injury that ends careers if you ignore it. Without surgery, permanent damage, career over, no commission clearance. 5 years from now, you're limping with arthritis. With surgery and rehab, full recovery. 8 months of physical therapy. The surgeon recommended June 14th, right after amateur commitments wrapped. Summer for recovery. Back in the ring by spring. I called Dad to explain. I was reluctant, but I needed him. He was first person I saw leaving the ring. Surgery cost $14,000 out of pocket after insurance. Not cheap, but manageable for a senior accountant with 23 years in. He didn't hesitate. Of course we'll handle this. Your future depends on it. I still have that text saved. April 7th, 6:47 p.m. Screenshot in a folder I started that same week. He offered 3 weeks off work for recovery. First week would be rough. Help with mobility, medications, appointments. Already planning it. Guest room downstairs, work remotely. First time since mom died that my needs actually mattered. Should have known better. I got home from training camp in early June, 2 weeks before scheduled surgery. The 3-hour drive from Detroit to Grand Rapids was brutal. Every pothole sent sharp reminders through my knee that something was wrong. The house looked the same. Same faded exterior. Same creaky porch step. But something felt off the second I walked through the door. Avery's 19 now. Since mom died when she was 5, dad's been obsessed with keeping her happy. She looks exactly like mom. Same blonde hair, blue eyes, smile. Sometimes I'd catch him just staring. The favoritism was consistent. Freshman year, I needed new sparring gear. Dad made me prove the old ones were worn out. Researched cheapest options. Took 3 days of comparison reviews before he'd approved $100. Avery wanted horseback riding lessons. He signed her up for premium package, $200 per session. She went twice. Quit because horses smelled. Never mentioned the wasted $400. When I won Golden Gloves, Dad texted congrats. When Avery got a 3-line role in community theater, he took a week off for every performance, bought flowers each night, posted constantly on social media. The pattern was clear. I could excel at everything. Get a pat on the head. Avery could do bare minimum. Get a parade. Turns out that dynamic was about to cost me everything. That first night home, we ordered pizza because neither Dad nor Avery could cook. We sat around the kitchen table, and I could tell something was up. Avery had that excited energy she always got when she wanted something. Finally, she couldn't contain it. So I have amazing news. I got accepted to that study abroad program in London. First I'd heard about it. Dad immediately beamed at her like she'd won a Nobel Prize. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I knew you'd get in. I offered congratulations, genuinely happy for her. That's great, Avery. What will you be studying? Oh, you know. She waved her hand vaguely. Art, history, and culture. British literature, maybe? They have a really flexible curriculum. But honestly, the best part is the experience. Living in London. Getting to explore Europe. She pulled out her phone and started showing photos. Looked more like a travel brochure than anything academic. Students posing at tourist spots, shopping, drinking tea. The actual classrooms appeared in exactly one photo. The program starts in September, she continued, But here's the really exciting part. Me and the girls are planning this amazing trip before it starts. 3 weeks in Greece and Italy. Athens, Santorini, Rome, the Amalfi Coast. She pulled up a shared document showing their itinerary. Every single day was planned around photo opportunities. Not a single museum or cultural site that didn't come with aesthetic potential. I nodded along, trying to stay engaged despite the throbbing in my knee. Sounds like you have the whole thing planned out. When are you going? Avery's eyes flickered to Dad, then back to me. That nervous tell she always had. Well, that's the thing. The only time that works for everyone is mid-June through early July. And it makes sense because we need time before the program starts. It clicked immediately. Mid-June through early July. The exact window for my surgery and recovery? The recovery Dad had promised to help me through. I set down my pizza carefully. Avery, that's exactly when my surgery is scheduled. Uncomfortable silence. Dad suddenly became intensely focused on his food. Avery looked between us, her expression shifting from excited to defensive. I mean, it's not like you're having open heart surgery or something, she said with a shrug. Can't you just push it back? This is literally once in a lifetime for me. We've already started planning. The hotels are booked. The flights are going up if we wait. Avery, it's not that simple, I said, keeping my voice level. The timing was specifically planned around my fight schedule. If I delay, I might not get medical clearance for my debut, and the doctor was clear that waiting makes the damage worse. It's always about your boxing stuff, she interrupted, rolling her eyes. Some of us have interests besides punching people in the face, and I've been working really hard at school. I deserve something special too. That's when Dad finally spoke up, not defending me, not shutting her down. Kane, is it possible to reschedule? Even a few weeks could work for Avery's plans. I stared at him, feeling the bottom drop out. Dad, we've discussed this multiple times. The surgeon's schedule is booked months in advance. If I reschedule now, it might be fall before he can fit me in. Then my entire pro debut is at risk. I continued, trying to appeal to logic. You said you'd take time off to help me recover. You can't be in two places at once. Dad shifted uncomfortably, his accounting brain trying to calculate some way to make this work. Well, that's something we might need to reconsider, he said carefully. Avery needs help preparing for this trip. Getting her situated in London afterward? It's a big step. International travel. Being in a foreign country alone. I felt like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. We were seriously discussing whether my necessary medical procedure should be postponed so Avery could take selfies in Greece. So your vacation time is now going to her leisure trip instead of my medical recovery? Don't be so dramatic, Kane, Avery sighed. You're making it sound way worse than it is. Your knee has been hurting for weeks and you're still walking fine. It can wait. This trip can't. We've already put down deposits. Everyone's counting on their parents. She turned to Dad with those big eyes that always got her whatever she wanted. Dad, tell him he's being dramatic. No one's saying anything definite yet, Dad said weakly, finally looking at me. Let's all sleep on it. Discuss it tomorrow. But I could already see it in his face. The decision was made. Avery had won. My surgery was getting pushed aside for her vacation. Over the next few days, the little changes became impossible to ignore. Dad spent hours at the kitchen table with Avery, researching Greek islands on his laptop. Which ones had the best beaches? Whether they should book a yacht excursion or a sunset sailing tour. Meanwhile, my pre-surgery paperwork sat on the kitchen counter, gathering dust and coffee stains. The folder the surgeon's office had given me, with all the instructions for pre-operative prep. It sat there untouched for 5 days straight, while Dad and Avery planned her trip to paradise. On day 5, the hospital called to confirm the surgery deposit. Standard pre-op procedure. $3,500 to hold the slot. Remainder due day of surgery. I forwarded the payment portal link to Dad via email. Added a note. They need deposit by Friday to hold June 14th date. His reply came 2 hours later. 4 words. I'm not paying it. Friday morning my phone rang. Surgeon's office. Very apologetic. We haven't received the deposit. Unfortunately, we'll need to release your surgical date. Would you like to reschedule for September? I sat on my bed and stared at the wall for 20 minutes. That email from Dad? Screenshot. Folder. Timestamp preserved. I tried one more time on day 6. Caught Dad alone in his home office, reviewing spreadsheets of trip expenses on his computer. I was on crutches. He was comparing resort amenities. Dad, can we talk about the surgery situation? He didn't even look up from his screen. Kane, we've been over this. I've already committed to Avery's trip. The deposits are non-refundable. We'll figure out your surgery when I get back. That could be fall. My whole career. Your career will be fine, he interrupted, looking at me with this expression that made it clear the conversation was over. You've been fighting for years. One more delay won't kill you. That's when it really sank in. He didn't just prioritize Avery's wants over my needs. He genuinely didn't think my needs were urgent. To him, my career-threatening injury was an inconvenience that could wait. I called coach the next morning, explained everything. He was furious. "They can't do this to you, Kane. This is insane. Let me make some calls. Maybe the gym can help cover some costs." When I approached Dad that evening with this potential solution, he got cold real fast. "I've made my decision. I've already put down non-refundable deposits for Avery's trip. Your surgery will need to wait until September." I tried one more time, showed him the email from the surgeon emphasizing the risks of delay. The surgeon had written it clearly. Continued weight bearing on a compromised meniscus accelerates cartilage degradation. Each week of delay increases surgical complexity and extends recovery timeline. Strongly advise against postponement. Dad barely looked at it. "Doctors always make things sound more urgent than they are. You can manage with rest until then. Avery deserves this opportunity." That word, deserves. Like she'd earned a vacation by existing, while I apparently didn't deserve basic medical care. I went back to my room and did something I should have done earlier. Started a folder on my laptop, labeled it documentation, copied every text, every email, requested my MRI discs from the imaging center, filed a HIPAA release for my complete medical records, emailed the surgeon's office asking for written confirmation of delayed surgery risks. Not rage, strategy. My options were limited. The surgeon was clear during our next call. "This is completely irresponsible. Delaying significantly increases your risk of permanent damage. The longer we wait, the worse it gets." I asked about alternatives. Medical loans required credit history I didn't have. The clinic offered payment plans, but needed a $7,000 down payment I couldn't afford. Coach arranged a meeting with my new manager. The promoter's office was sympathetic, but direct. "Your fight slot is performance-based. If you can't pass medical clearance by fall, we'll have to reassess. The gym can contribute $2,000 through the fighter fund. Better than nothing. Still nowhere near enough." Meanwhile, Avery was living her best life, packing and repacking, taking selfies with her new clothes, asking my opinion on which sundress looked better. Each question felt like another slap in the face. Then one evening she dropped another bomb. She held up two nearly identical linen shirts. "Which one should I bring for Dad?" "For the trip, obviously." I just stared at her. "Dad's coming with you?" She looked at me like I was stupid. "Yeah, for the first 10 days to help me get settled." "Didn't he tell you?" He hadn't. The same vacation time he'd originally promised for my recovery was now going to Greece with Avery. When I confronted Dad, he didn't even have the decency to look guilty. "Avery's never traveled internationally. She needs guidance. You're an adult. You can handle things on your own." I packed my stuff that night, told Dad I was heading back to Detroit early. His response was a shrug and, "If that's what you think is best," before going back to packing. Avery's parting wisdom? Try not to be so negative all the time. Your attitude is probably making your knee worse. The drive back was brutal. Every bump sent pain through my knee, but it was nothing compared to the cold clarity settling in my chest. Back in Detroit, things went from bad to worse fast. My gym brother Mason let me crash at his apartment near the gym. Good guy. He rearranged furniture to make the place accessible, drove me to appointments, helped when the pain got too intense to sleep. The sports medicine team put me on a modified program. Light stretching, minimal movement drills. Nothing intense. But my knee was already too far gone. The doctor had noted weight-bearing restrictions in my chart. I wasn't supposed to be doing any lateral movement at all. Risk of further cartilage damage was documented on page 3. During what should have been an easy footwork session, something popped again. Worse this time. I went down on the gym floor. The pain was so bad I thought I might pass out. Literally saw stars. My vision went dark around the edges. Coach was beside me instantly, his face grim. "We need emergency services. Now." The ambulance ride was a blur. Paramedics asking questions I could barely answer through the pain. Vitals being checked. IV started. Someone saying something about potential nerve damage. The ER doctor's diagnosis was brutal. The meniscus tear had worsened significantly with additional ligament damage. But worse than that, the cartilage damage had progressed. What should have been a straightforward arthroscopic procedure was now looking at possible reconstructive surgery. When he learned a recommended surgery had been canceled for non-medical reasons, his professional mask slipped. This should never have happened. This is basically medical negligence on whoever made this call. You're looking at a much more extensive procedure now with longer recovery and potentially permanent limitation. Who's responsible for this decision? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the answer was my own father, and saying that out loud made it too real. The doctor waited for a response, then shook his head and made a note on my chart. They admitted me overnight for observation. pumped me full of pain meds that made everything fuzzy but didn't really stop the pain, just made it distant, like it was happening to someone else. I texted Dad from the hospital bed around 9 p.m. Knee completely gave out during training. In ER damage much worse. Surgery now more complicated and expensive. May have permanent damage. His response came 6 hours later, 3 a.m. my time. He was probably somewhere in Athens, checking his phone between activities. Sorry to hear that. Try to rest. Avery and I leave tomorrow morning. We'll have limited cell service for a few days. That was it. No asking which hospital. No asking if I needed anything. No concern about permanent damage. Just, sorry to hear that. Like I'd told him my car got scratched. That text? Screenshot. Folder. The next day brought the final blow. Coach called me into his office with the gym owner. He didn't waste time. With your current prognosis, we have concerns about your ability to pass commission medical. We need to discuss your fight card slot. Message received. No clearance, no fight date. Without surgery, I couldn't compete. Without competition, I couldn't build the record needed to keep momentum. I left on crutches, more defeated than I'd ever felt. That night, lying in Mason's spare bedroom, staring at the ceiling, something in me just turned off. Done being passive. Done waiting for my family to do the right thing. Done being the responsible one who gets screwed. Time to take control. What I did. Mason found me the next morning still in bed, staring at the ceiling. This can't continue. We need to find another way. What way? I asked. I can't afford surgery. Can't compete without it. Can't build a career if I don't compete. Then we change the game, Mason said. You're not alone. The gym community has resources. Let's find them. He was right. I'd been so focused on Dad's betrayal that I'd basically given up. Stopped looking for solutions. Just wallowed. Over the next 3 weeks, I worked every channel I could find. Local clinic got me direct access to insurance, bypassing Dad entirely. State Boxing Commission outlined emergency grants, but I was waitlisted behind 12 other applicants. Funding wouldn't come through until September at the earliest. Applied for a medical loan through 2 different lenders. Both denied. No credit history, no cosigner, no collateral. Dead ends everywhere. Coach secured me housing through the gym's community program. Mason rallied fighters to launch a crowdfunding campaign that gained traction, but wouldn't cover the full amount in time. Coach had been calling in favors since the day I got hurt. 3 weeks of phone calls, dead ends, maybes that turned into no's. Then, he finally got through to someone who said yes. Phone rang from an unknown number. Dominic Torres. The same guy who'd handed me my Golden Gloves trophy 4 years ago. He'd been funding equipment for the gym's youth program for years, sponsoring kids who couldn't afford gear. Real one. Coach has been calling me for weeks. Finally got the full picture. I'd like to meet. We met at a cafe near the gym that afternoon. Dominic was exactly what you'd expect from a former elite fighter turned businessman. Still in great shape, well-dressed, guarded. He ordered coffee, then sat back. I need to see everything before I commit to anything. MRI, surgeon's estimate, commission clearance timeline, your amateur record. Send it to my office. Board meets every other Thursday. If they approve, payment goes direct to the surgical center. Usually takes 2 to 3 weeks from submission. What's the structure? Advance against future purses. You earn, you pay back a percentage over time. Career ends before repayment, it converts to a grant. All documented. I submitted my records that afternoon. Waited 9 days. Board approved the following Thursday. Surgery scheduled for the next week. I made one last attempt to reach Dad. Not for money. Just to let him know I'd figured it out without him. Found a way to get surgery without your help. Scheduled for next week. His response was classic. Glad you worked something out. Avery and I are extending our stay another week. Having a wonderful time. Hope surgery goes well. No apology, no acknowledgement, just info about their extended vacation. Perfect. That text was all I needed to confirm what came next. After that exchange, I blocked both Dad and Avery's numbers. Surgery day arrived. Mason drove me to the hospital. The surgeon greeted me with professional warmth. You've been through quite an ordeal to get here, but you made it. We're going to do everything we can to get you back in the ring. The procedure took nearly 5 hours. The damage was extensive. When I woke up, Mason was in a chair beside my bed, scrolling his phone. He looked up when I stirred. Welcome back, champ. How you feeling? Like someone took a power drill to my leg. Sounds about right. The surgeon came by during rounds the next morning. Chart in hand. We got everything cleaned up. Bad news is recovery is closer to 13 months than 8. But with proper rehab, I'm optimistic about your long-term prognosis. That first week was rough. Pain meds, physical therapy evaluations, awkward adjustments to life with an immobilized leg, learning how to shower with a plastic bag over my knee, learning how to sleep without rolling onto my bad side. But I had support. Coach checked in daily. Mason made sure I had everything I needed. Gym guys rotated visits, brought food, brought movies, brought conversation that wasn't about my family or my injury, just normal stuff. Then on July 15th, 3 days post-op, Coach stopped by with food and a weird look on his face. Have you heard from your father? There's been major travel disruptions in Europe. Airline strikes. Greece is particularly affected. I hadn't been following news during recovery. Quick search confirmed it. Air travel across Europe basically shut down. Multiple carriers. Airport workers striking. Athens airport chaos. Curiosity got me. Temporarily unblocked Avery to check her social media. Wanted to see if the universe was doing its thing? What I found? A mess. First post, July 15th. Stuck Athens airport 8+ hours. All flights canceled minimum 3 days. Every hotel within 50 miles fully booked. Sleeping on terminal floor tonight. This is insane. Over the next 12 days, they made every wrong move. Instead of waiting for the airline to rebook them for free, Dad panicked. Hired some premium travel concierge service that charged $2,800 upfront to expedite things. The concierge booked them on a route through Istanbul that got canceled twice. Company went dark after taking the money. Classic scam that preys on desperate travelers. Then came the emergency hotel. $450 per night during peak crisis. They stayed 9 nights because Dad kept thinking they'd leave tomorrow. He kept paying to feel in control. Every charge felt like progress, even when it wasn't. Classic sunk cost fallacy playing out in real time. July 27th, Avery posted a rant totaling up their losses. Deleted it 6 hours later, but I got screenshots. Somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 gone. 2 mistakes. The scam concierge and Dad's refusal to just wait it out. One post survived from before everything collapsed. Caption: Thanks Daddy for making dreams come true, with a flat lay of her passport and sunglasses. The comments on that one aged like milk in the sun. In between the disasters, I got the text I'd been waiting for. Unknown international number. July 16th, 3:17 a.m. my time. Kane, it's Dad. Using temporary phone. We're stuck in Athens. All flights canceled. Avery having complete breakdown. Need to get home ASAP. Can you check flights from Athens to Detroit next 3 to 4 days? Hotel internet barely working. Please. I read it twice. The same man who'd refused to pay my surgery deposit was now asking me for help with his vacation crisis. The guy who'd told me to handle things on your own now needed me to handle things for him. I let it sit for 6 hours. Let him sweat. Then replied at 9 a.m. my time. Call your airline. Call your card issuer. This isn't my job. He tried calling. I declined. He tried again. Declined. Sent follow-up text. Really need your help here. My response. You made it clear in June I needed to handle my own problems. You're capable of handling yours. That was it. Blocked the temporary number 2. Went back to recovery. Rehab became a daily checklist. Stretch, ice, elevate, repeat. Tedious as anything, but it actually worked pretty fast. 3 weeks post-op, Dad reached out through email since I'd blocked his numbers. Need to talk. Important. Call when you can. He called that evening. Kane, he began, sounding tired. How's recovery? Fine. What do you want? He let out a heavy sigh. The Greece situation created some complications. Credit utilization spiked to 94%. Missed one payment during the chaos, and my APR jumped to 29%. Tried a balance transfer, got denied. Interest is eating me alive. There it was. My rule-following accountant father had overextended himself badly. The emergency spending, the concierge fees, the panic bookings. His credit was taking hits, and the bills were piling up. Music to my ears. Sounds like a you problem, I said, voice flat as concrete. It is, he confirmed, and it's made me reconsider some recent decisions. I cut him off. Dad, I'm 3 weeks post-major surgery, rebuilding my life without the support I was promised. Your regrets aren't my concern. Long silence. That's fair. I just wanted you to know things aren't working out as expected. They rarely do, I said. Good luck with that. I ended the call. No feelings about it. Zero. He was dealing with consequences. I was dealing with recovery. The difference was I'd found my footing through people who actually showed up while he was slowly realizing Avery wasn't going to save him from anything. She couldn't even save herself. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The months passed, each day marked by progress, rehab exercises, physical therapy, gradual improvements. The surgical scars faded from angry red to barely noticeable lines. Your progress is remarkable, the surgeon said at my 4-month follow-up. You're ahead of schedule. I know, I answered. Still notice it during lateral movement, but the constant pain is gone. The rehab program lined up with other wins. Commission approved my medical deferral request. Promoter officially held my slot for spring, confirmed in writing. A regional sports equipment company signed me to a small sponsorship deal. Training expenses covered. I'd also started working with Dominic's sports management company part-time, learning the business side of boxing, opening my eyes to opportunities I'd never considered before. Meanwhile, news from home kept trickling in. Avery's London program collapsed after 6 weeks, failed 2 of her 3 courses, academic probation, lost her financial aid eligibility because her GPA dropped below the minimum threshold. They expected me to actually do readings and write papers, she complained when she called. It was supposed to be about experiencing culture. So unfair. That's literally what college is. Reading and writing. What did you think you were signing up for? Whatever. Dad's super mad since he paid for the whole semester up front. They only refunded 20%. And now my loans are coming due, but I can't re-enroll until I fix my GPA somewhere else first. I almost smiled. Almost. Another expensive lesson Dad was paying for. Another consequence rolling downhill. Dad's situation had gotten worse. The Greece disaster had maxed out his credit cards. He'd taken an early withdrawal from his 401k to cover the emergency costs, which meant penalties and taxes he hadn't planned for. Then he had to sell his truck, the one he'd driven for 12 years. Got $8,000 for something worth twice that, because he needed cash fast. I heard from a cousin that he'd also stopped contributing to his retirement entirely. Just treading water now, trying to keep the lights on. He was drowning in debt he'd created over 12 days of panic. And the kicker? The chargeback he'd filed on those concierge fees got denied. The company had disappeared, and his card issuer said he'd voluntarily paid a third party. He lost every dispute. Nearly $3,000 gone. I'd been keeping records of my own situation, not for revenge, for clarity. See, when Dad refused my surgery deposit, something clicked. He'd promised to cover it. Made that promise in writing via email and text messages. Then he deliberately withdrew that support, causing me documented harm. I'd been consulting with a legal clinic. They helped me organize everything and draft something clear. Their advice was simple. Don't threaten, don't extort, just set expectations in writing and stick to them. Because documentation is power. As fall went on, Dad started reaching out more often. His situation had gotten even worse. The 401k withdrawal triggered tax complications. The credit card debt was crushing him. Avery had moved back home after London, showing zero awareness of financial constraints, still expecting Dad to fund her lifestyle. He wanted to rebuild our relationship. Translation, he needed something. When Thanksgiving approached, Dad actually called instead of texting. Kane, I'd really like you to come home for Thanksgiving. It would mean a lot to have family together. Maybe, I said, gave him nothing. Please. I know I made mistakes, but you're my son. Family is important. Family is important. I let that sit for a second. Let it hang in the air between us. Where was that energy when he was refusing my surgery deposit? Where was family is important when I was lying in a hospital bed? But I decided to go. Not for reconciliation, for closure on my terms. Thanksgiving Day, I drove home. My knee felt strong for the first time in months. Solid. Stable. The physical therapy had worked. I was stronger than before the injury in some ways. More aware of my body. More disciplined about maintenance and prevention. The house looked the same from the outside, but I knew everything inside had crumbled. Dad answered the door, and he looked wrecked. Lines deeper around his eyes. Hair significantly grayer. Shoulders slumped. He'd lost maybe 15 pounds. The kind of weight loss that comes from stress and skipping meals. Kane, it's good to see you, he said, trying for warmth, but his voice just sounded hollow. Inside, nothing had changed except everything had changed. The furniture was the same, but the vibe was completely different. Defeated. Desperate. Avery was sprawled on the couch scrolling her phone, barely acknowledging my arrival with a half-hearted, hey. She looked older than 19, like stress had found her too. Dinner was pathetic. Store-bought turkey, pre-made sides, stuffing from a box. Dad clearly couldn't afford the usual spread. Just generic Thanksgiving food that tasted like surrender. Avery complained about everything. The turkey was dry. Why couldn't we have gone to a restaurant? This was pathetic. Dad just took it. Didn't even defend himself. Just looked exhausted, picking at his food. After dinner, Avery disappeared upstairs without helping clean up. Dad started clearing dishes with slow, robotic movements. We moved to the living room. This was it. Time for the conversation I'd been planning for months. So, I said, settling into the armchair across from him. Financial situation any better? Dad shook his head, and I could see real despair in his eyes. Not really. The credit card debt is killing me. Tax penalties from the 401k withdrawal, plus regular expenses, Plus, Avery's student loan payments started since she's no longer enrolled. I'm barely keeping my head above water. Some months I'm not sure how I'm going to make it. Rough, I said. Zero sympathy in my voice. None. I was actually hoping, he continued, and here it came, looking uncomfortable in a way that told me he knew what he was about to ask was insane. Maybe you could help me out, just temporarily, just until I get back on my feet. I know you've been working with that sports management company. If you could contribute something toward household expenses, maybe $500 a month, just for a few months? There it was. The real reason for the Thanksgiving invitation. The real reason he'd suddenly wanted to rebuild our relationship. He wanted money from me. $500 a month, $6,000 a year, from the same son whose $14,000 surgery he'd refused, who he'd abandoned in a hospital bed while taking photos in Greece, who he'd told to handle things on your own. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost, but not surprising. Avery came downstairs halfway through Dad's ask, like she could sense someone saying the word expenses. Phone in hand, hoodie on, eyes already annoyed. "Why is it so quiet?" she said, then noticed my face. Dad's drained expression. The tension in the room. She stopped pretending. "Wait, are you seriously not helping?" Dad didn't answer. That was the answer. Avery's voice dropped into that fake calm tone people use right before they start bargaining. "Okay, listen, I need to handle something. My loan payment is due Monday. Dad can't cover it. If it hits collections, it's gonna wreck my credit." She looked at me like I was an ATM that learned boundaries and offended her personally. "Just float it," she said. "You're back on track. You have people. You can do this." I didn't even argue. "Call your loan servicer. Set up a payment plan. This isn't my problem." Her face shifted fast. Sweet to scared to mad, like a buffering wheel. "You're really doing this? It's Thanksgiving. You did it first," I said, and that was all I gave her. She stood there, processing. The easy solution was sitting right in front of her, and it was saying no. For maybe the first time in her life, being Avery wasn't enough. I turned back to Dad. I didn't say anything else, just pulled out a manila folder from my jacket, slid it across the coffee table. Inside, printed screenshots of his "I'm not paying it" email, the surgeon's written warning about delayed surgery risks, the ER admission paperwork, his "sorry to hear that" text from Athens, 17,000 in documented additional costs that wouldn't have existed if he'd kept his word. Dad's face went from confused to pale as he flipped through the pages. "What is this?" "That's the paper trail," I said, voice flat. A legal clinic helped me put it together, organize everything clearly. I pulled out a single sheet from my jacket pocket. "This is a boundary agreement. Not legally binding, but it's my line in the sand. Any financial requests from you get ignored. If you push, I'll only respond by email. If you keep pushing, I disappear completely. You don't get to ask me for money. Ever." Dad stared at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. "You can't be serious. You're talking about cutting me off completely?" "I'm talking about protecting myself," I corrected. "From people who've proven they'll sacrifice me the second it's convenient. You made a choice last June, Dad. You chose Avery's vacation over my medical needs, her comfort over my future, her photos over my career. Now you're going to live with that choice." His hands were shaking as he held the paper. "Sign it, and we stay civil. We can show up to the same family events without drama. We can exchange basic updates. But don't expect anything from me financially or emotionally. Don't sign, and I walk out that door and you never hear from me again. Your call. Kane, I'm your father. You can't just—" "You stopped being my father," I interrupted, "when you abandoned me in a hospital bed while you traveled with Avery. When you chose her wants over my needs. You're not my father anymore. You're just some guy who shares my DNA. This is manipulation." "No," I said calmly. "Manipulation is what you did when you promised to support my surgery and then took that money to Greece. I'm just setting boundaries, clear ones, in writing. So there's no confusion." The silence stretched out. I could see him calculating, trying to find some way out, some angle, but there wasn't one. He'd backed himself into this corner through his own choices. Finally, he reached for the pen. "You've changed," he said quietly as he signed. "Yeah," I agreed. "I stopped being naive about who actually has my back." He signed it. Symbolic surrender. I took it, folded it carefully, put it in my jacket. "One more thing," I said. "Avery's debt, her problems, her choices, those are yours to deal with, not mine." "Never mind." I stood up. "Every time you look at her, remember what she cost you. Not just money, your son." I walked toward the door. Dad called after me. "Kane, wait." I turned back. "We just did talk. You made your choice. Live with it. I'm doing great. Surgery was successful. Pro debut is back on track. My life is coming together despite everything you did." I paused at the door. "The only thing you killed was our relationship. Hope those photos were worth it." I walked out. Got in my car, drove away. Behind me, Dad, standing in the doorway, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Avery's face in the upstairs window, confused. Didn't look back. The drive to Detroit felt different, lighter, like I'd finally set down something I'd been carrying for years. He picked her trip over my knee. I picked my life over him. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My dad gave my brother my VP position and called me a failure. I resigned, leaving them with the server keys. They forgot I controlled. After the system crashed, they begged me to return. I told them my rate was 50% of the company. Hey Reddit, grab a snack because this is going to be a long one. I'm still processing everything that happened, but I needed to share this somewhere because, honestly, it's the most satisfying thing I've ever experienced in my 31 years on this planet. So I, 31 male, just destroyed my family's business. Not on purpose at first, but when they handed me the detonator and begged me to press the button, I figured why not? They had it coming. Let me back up and give you some context about the Johnson family dynamic, because without it, this story makes no sense. My dad started Johnson Industrial Solutions about 25 years ago. Started in our garage with a couple computers and a dream, grew it into a legitimate mid-sized company specializing in industrial automation software. We're talking about systems that run manufacturing plants, distribution operations, supply chain management, the kind of software that, if it goes down, entire factories stop producing and companies start hemorrhaging money by the hour. Our client base included 3 Fortune 500 companies and about 40 mid-sized manufacturers across the Midwest. Growing up, I was always the tech kid. While other kids were playing sports or chasing each other around the playground, I was in the garage with Dad, learning how servers worked, how networks connected, how to write code that actually did something useful. By the time I was 15, I was helping troubleshoot client issues after school. By 18, I was basically running our IT infrastructure as an unpaid intern while finishing high school. I still remember the first time I saved the company from a major disaster. I was 17 years old, home on summer break, when our main database server started throwing corruption errors. Dad was panicking, calling expensive consultants who couldn't figure out the problem. I sat down at the terminal, spent 6 hours tracing the issue, and found a memory leak in a third-party module we were using. Fixed it myself. Saved the company probably $50,000 in emergency consulting fees and potential client losses. Dad's response? A pat on the shoulder and good work, sport. No bonus, no recognition, nothing. Just business as usual. My younger brother Kevin, he was the golden child, the charming one, the one who played football, got the girls, made our parents proud in all the visible ways that relatives could see at Christmas dinner. He was 3 years younger than me, but somehow always managed to be the center of attention. Kevin had this natural charisma that I never developed. He could walk into a room, and everyone would gravitate toward him. He told stories that made people laugh. He remembered names and details about people's lives. He had this effortless way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the world. Me? I was awkward. Still am, honestly. I preferred computers to people because computers made sense. They followed rules. They didn't play favorites or make you feel invisible. The favoritism started early and never stopped. When I got straight A's, my parents nodded and said, "That's expected." When Kevin scraped by with C's, they threw him a pizza party for trying so hard. When I built my first server rack at 16 from salvaged parts I'd collected from electronics recyclers, Dad barely looked up from the TV. When Kevin scored the winning touchdown at some JV game, Dad was crying tears of joy in the stands. You get the picture. Classic golden child situation that would make any family dynamics expert cringe. The pattern continued through every milestone of my life. When I got accepted to State's computer science program with a partial scholarship, my parents said it was a good practical choice. When Kevin got accepted to a private university that cost 3 times as much, they threw him a graduation party with catering and invited half the neighborhood. After high school, I went to State for computer science, paid my own way through scholarships and part-time work because Dad said the company couldn't afford to help with tuition. Meanwhile, Kevin went to that private university where he majored in business administration and minored in frat parties. Full ride from the bank of Mom and Dad. I worked 25 hours a week during the school year to cover my expenses. Kevin called home whenever he needed spending money, and it appeared in his account within hours. I graduated with honors and minimal debt because I'd busted my rear end. Kevin graduated with a C+ average and a sense of entitlement that would make a trust fund baby blush. 4 years later, I graduated with honors and immediately started working at Johnson Industrial Solutions full-time. Started at the bottom despite literally building half our systems during my teenage years. Fine, whatever. I figured I'd prove myself and work my way up. And I did. Over the next 8 years, I became the backbone of that company. I'm not being arrogant here. I'm stating facts that multiple employees would verify if you asked them. I designed our entire server architecture from scratch, created the security protocols that protected client data, wrote custom software solutions that landed us 3 of our biggest contracts. When our main competitor tried to poach our clients with a fancy cloud-based solution, I built something better in 6 months, single-handedly, while also managing our existing infrastructure. There was this one time, about 4 years in, when we almost lost our biggest client, a manufacturing company that accounted for 22% of our revenue. Their CTO was shopping for alternatives because our reporting dashboard was outdated. I spent 3 weeks working 18-hour days building a completely new analytics platform, custom visualizations, real-time monitoring, predictive maintenance alerts. The CTO was so impressed he signed a 5-year contract extension. Dad mentioned it in a company meeting as a nice technical upgrade, without using my name. Kevin, who had literally no involvement, somehow got thanked for relationship management that kept the client happy. Dad promoted me to Director of Technology after 5 years. Still not VP, but okay. I figured I was building towards something. The title came with a modest raise and an office with a window. I told myself to be patient. I told myself hard work would eventually be recognized. I told myself that family loyalty meant something. I was wrong about all of it. Then Kevin graduated. This was 3 years ago. Kevin had bounced around after college, tried a couple sales jobs, failed at a startup that Dad quietly funded and never mentioned again. At 25, he was basically unemployed and living in an apartment that our parents paid for. The startup failure was particularly embarrassing. Kevin had convinced Dad to invest $60,000 in a revolutionary app that was supposed to connect party planners with local vendors. The app was essentially a worse version of Yelp with a party theme. It launched, got maybe 200 downloads, and died within 8 months. Dad never asked for the money back. Never even mentioned it. Meanwhile, I'd been asking for a modest equipment budget increase for 2 years and kept getting told the company couldn't afford it. Dad's solution to Kevin's unemployment? Bring Kevin into the company. As my equal, Director of Business Development, a position that literally didn't exist until Kevin needed a job. I swallowed my pride. Fine. Kevin could handle the business side while I handled the tech side. Division of labor. Made sense on paper. Except Kevin was terrible at his job. Like, genuinely bad. He'd schedule meetings with potential clients and then forget to show up. He'd promise features our software couldn't deliver without consulting me first. He'd take prospects to fancy restaurants on the company card and then lose the deal anyway. I watched him blow a deal worth potentially $200,000 in annual revenue because he promised the client we could integrate with a legacy system that didn't have API access. When the client's technical team asked how we'd accomplish this, Kevin just said, "Our tech guy will figure it out," and moved on. The client walked away because they correctly identified that Kevin had no idea what he was talking about. But Dad couldn't see it, or wouldn't see it. Every failure was a learning experience, or building relationships for the long term. Every success, even minor ones, was proof that Kevin was finding his stride. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks keeping the technical side running while cleaning up Kevin's messes with clients he'd overpromised. Got the same salary I'd had for 2 years. Same title, same office. When I asked Dad about advancement, he gave me this condescending smile and said, "David, technical people don't usually move into leadership. You're valuable exactly where you are. Don't worry about titles. Don't worry about titles." Right. Easy to say when your last name is on the building. What really got me was the server room situation. Our entire company ran on infrastructure I had designed, built, and maintained. Every piece of software, every client database, every communication system, every backup protocol. I knew every password, every encryption key, every failsafe. Nobody else did because nobody else had ever bothered to learn. I'd tried training people multiple times. I created documentation that nobody read. I offered to run workshops that nobody attended. I practically begged for a junior admin who could learn the systems and provide backup coverage. But Dad always said we couldn't afford to dedicate resources to IT training when there were more pressing business needs. Translation: Kevin needed a bigger marketing budget for client dinners that went nowhere. So for 8 years, I was the single point of failure for the entire company. The only person who could access our core systems. The only one who knew how everything connected. And nobody seemed to care about that vulnerability because, in their minds, I'd always be there. I'd always be the reliable one. The one who fixed problems without complaint. The invisible backbone of Johnson Industrial Solutions. That was about to change. 6 months ago, Dad called a company-wide meeting. Big announcement, he said. Time for Johnson Industrial Solutions to enter a new phase of growth. I figured it was going to be some new contract announcement, or maybe a merger discussion. Instead, Dad stood at the front of our conference room with Kevin beside him and dropped a bomb. After careful consideration, I've decided it's time to restructure our leadership team. We're creating a new vice president of operations position to oversee both our technical and business development divisions. Someone who can bridge both worlds and lead us into the future. My heart started racing. Vice president. After 8 years of proving myself, finally getting recognized. I'm proud to announce that Kevin will be taking on this role, effective immediately. The room went silent. I watched as my coworkers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Jake, my closest work friend, actually winced. Everyone knew Kevin couldn't find the server room without a map, let alone oversee technical operation. Kevin stood there grinning like he'd just won the lottery. That same smile he'd had when he got the car for his 16th birthday, while I was driving a 12-year-old sedan I'd bought myself. That same smile he'd had at every Christmas when his pile of presents was twice the size of mine. Dad continued with some nonsense about Kevin's business acumen and relationship-building skills being essential for the company's growth. How Kevin's fresh perspective would complement our technical capabilities. How this was about the future of Johnson Industrial Solutions. When he finished, Kevin said a few words about being honored and committed to excellence. The same generic phrases he'd probably pulled from some business book he never finished reading. I sat there frozen. 8 years. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, of building systems from nothing, of saving contracts Kevin nearly lost, of being the backbone of this entire operation. And my reward was watching my younger brother get promoted over me. After the meeting, I went to Dad's office. I needed to understand what was happening. He was sitting behind his desk looking satisfied with himself when I walked in. Dad, I need to talk to you about this VP decision. He sighed like I was a child interrupting his important adult time. David, I know this might be hard to hear, but Kevin's been showing real leadership potential lately. The company needs someone who can see the big picture. Big picture? I've been seeing the big picture for 8 years. I built the systems that make this company function. And you'll continue to do that. You're invaluable in your current role. My current role that Kevin is now in charge of? Kevin will handle the strategic direction. You'll handle the technical implementation. It's a natural partnership. Dad, Kevin doesn't understand our systems. He couldn't tell you the difference between a server and a sandwich. Dad's face hardened. That's exactly the kind of attitude that concerns me, David. You're technically gifted, but you lack the people skills to lead. Kevin brings something different to the table. What does he bring exactly? Failed sales pitches? Missed meetings? That startup you funded that went bankrupt in 8 months? That's enough. Dad stood up, his face red. I've made my decision. Kevin is VP. You can either support that decision and continue being a valuable member of this team, or you can let your jealousy destroy your career here. Jealousy? Dad, I've given everything to this company. I've missed holidays, canceled vacations, worked through illnesses. I've been here every single time there was a crisis, at any hour, on any day. You've given your technical skills, which is exactly what we pay you for. But leadership requires more than just knowing how computers work. Kevin has vision. He has charisma. He has what it takes to be the face of this company. I stood there processing his words. The face of the company. That's what this was about. Kevin looked good in a suit and could shake hands with clients. I was the awkward tech guy who actually made everything work. You think I can't lead because I'm not charming enough? I think you're a brilliant technician who should focus on what you do best. Stop trying to be something you're not. That's been your problem since childhood, David. You always wanted to be something you weren't instead of accepting who you are. That one hit different. 20+ years of feeling invisible in my own family, condensed into one condescending sentence. I walked out of his office without another word, went straight to my car and sat there for an hour, replaying every sacrifice I'd made for that company, every weekend I'd worked, every vacation I'd skipped, every relationship I'd neglected because there was always another crisis to solve. And my reward was being called a brilliant technician who should know his place. That night, I called my girlfriend Rachel. She'd been listening to me complain about my family for 3 years and had the patience of a saint. She was a nurse, worked in the ICU at University Medical Center, and she understood long hours and feeling underappreciated. They promoted Kevin over you. Yep, the Kevin who thought SQL was a type of fish until last year? That's the one. David, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I'm done being invisible. Those words surprised me even as I said them, but they felt right. For the first time in my life, I was done accepting whatever scraps my family decided to throw me. The next few weeks were educational. Kevin started his new role with all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop, calling meetings to discuss synergy and operational efficiency while clearly having no idea what any of our systems actually did. He'd pull me into his office to explain basic concepts that anyone who'd been paying attention for the last 3 years would already know. What's a firewall? How does our backup system work? Why can't we just move everything to Google Drive? I'd explain things as simply as I could, and he'd nod like he understood. Then he'd turn around and present those same concepts to Dad like they were his original insights. I've been analyzing our infrastructure, and I think we're over-reliant on localized server solutions. We should consider a distributed approach to risk management. That was literally my words from a proposal I'd written 2 years ago. A proposal Dad had rejected because it was too technical for him to understand. Dad ate it up. Every meeting, he'd praise Kevin's strategic thinking, while I sat there watching my own ideas get repackaged and credited to someone else. But here's where things got interesting. Kevin decided he wanted to modernize our infrastructure. He'd read some article about cloud computing and decided we needed to migrate everything immediately. Never mind that our clients had specific security requirements that made certain cloud solutions problematic. Never mind that our current systems were stable and efficient. Kevin wanted cloud because cloud sounded impressive. He brought in outside consultants without consulting me. These guys showed up with fancy presentations and buzzwords, promising to revolutionize our operations. They quoted a price tag that made my eyes water, $350,000, and a timeline that was completely unrealistic. When I raised concerns in the planning meeting, Kevin cut me off. David, I appreciate your input, but we need to think bigger here. Your legacy systems have served us well, but it's time to evolve. Legacy systems. The systems I'd built from scratch. The systems that had never had a major outage in 8 years. Kevin, if we rush this migration, we're going to have serious problems. Our clients depend on uptime. Any disruption could cost us contracts. That's why we're bringing in professionals. He gestured to the consultants, who nodded sagely. These guys have done this dozens of times. We're in good hands. I looked at Dad, hoping he'd see reason. He was nodding along with Kevin like everything made perfect sense. I want David fully cooperative with the transition team, Kevin continued. That means handing over all system access, documentation, and passwords so they can do their assessment. There it was. The moment everything crystallized. They wanted my keys, not because they valued my input, but because they needed my access to proceed with a plan that would probably blow up in their faces. For 8 years, I'd been the gatekeeper of this company's most critical infrastructure. I knew every backdoor, every encryption key, every fail-safe protocol. Information I'd never fully documented because Dad had always said we couldn't afford to dedicate resources to that kind of administrative overhead. Now they wanted me to hand all that over to outside consultants so Kevin could play tech visionary. I smiled and said I'd prepare everything they needed. Then I went back to my office and started planning. Over the next 2 weeks, I did 3 things. First, I documented everything. Every system I'd built, every process I'd created, every line of code that kept the company running. Not for them, for me. I wanted a complete record of exactly what I'd contributed before everything went sideways. Second, I started quietly backing up my personal files and any proprietary work I'd developed on my own time. Legal had always been vague about IP ownership for stuff I'd built outside working hours, so I made sure I had copies of everything that was clearly mine. Third, I began preparing my resignation. This wasn't revenge yet. This was self-preservation. I knew Kevin's cloud migration was going to be a disaster, and I didn't want to be the scapegoat when it failed. Better to leave on my own terms than get blamed for someone else's incompetence. The final straw came on a Thursday afternoon. Kevin called another all-hands meeting, this time to discuss organizational restructuring. Dad was there, beaming with pride as Kevin presented a new org chart. My position had been eliminated. Well, not eliminated exactly. Restructured. The Director of Technology role was being replaced with a Technical Support Coordinator position, reporting to the outside consulting team. Same responsibility. Lower title. 20% pay cut. And I'd be reporting to people who'd been at the company for 3 weeks instead of 8 years. After the meeting, Dad pulled me aside. David, I know this seems like a step back, but think of it as an opportunity. You'll be working closely with experienced professionals who can help you grow. Help me grow? Dad, I built everything they're supposedly experts in. Your attitude is exactly the problem. You're resistant to change. You think you know better than everyone else. That's why you've plateaued here. That's why you've never advanced past a certain level. You're a technician, David, a good one, but you're not a leader, and you need to accept that. Plateaued? I've been running your IT infrastructure single-handedly, while Kevin couldn't find the printer without a map. Kevin is a leader. You're a technician. There's no shame in that, but you need to accept your place in this company. My place. My place was apparently as a glorified help desk employee at my own family's company, while my brother, who could barely send an email without assistance, played executive. Is this really how you see me? I asked quietly. After everything I've done? Dad looked at me with something like pity. David, I love you, but you've never had what it takes to lead. You're good at following instructions and solving technical problems. That's valuable. But Kevin has the charisma, the vision, the leadership qualities that this company needs to grow. I know it's hard to hear, but sometimes we have to recognize our limitation. I just stared at him. The new position comes with a retention bonus if you commit to staying through the transition. $15,000. We really do need you for the technical handoff. Think about it. He walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway, realizing that I'd spent 8 years building a company for people who saw me as nothing more than a useful tool. That night, I typed up my resignation letter. 2 paragraphs. Professional, courteous, and effective in 2 weeks. Then I deleted it and wrote another one. This one was 1 sentence. I resign. Effective immediately. I submitted it at 6 a.m. the next morning. Emailed it to Dad, Kevin, and HR. Then I turned off my phone, drove to Rachel's apartment, and slept for 14 hours straight. When I finally woke up, I had 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. The panic had begun. Here's the thing about being the only person who knows how all the systems work. When you leave, nobody else can fix anything. And I mean anything. Day 1 of my absence, the backup server started throwing errors. This was actually a minor issue, a scheduled maintenance task that needed manual approval because I'd never automated that particular step. Would have taken me 5 minutes to resolve. Without me, nobody knew what to do. They called the consulting team, who spent 8 hours trying to diagnose the problem before accidentally making it worse by restarting services in the wrong order. Day 2, the email server went down. Not because anything was actually broken, but because nobody knew the admin credentials to restart the service. Those credentials were in my head, along with about 200 other passwords that I'd never been asked to document. The consultants tried to reset the password and managed to lock themselves out entirely. Day 3, their biggest client called threatening to terminate their contract because their monitoring dashboard had stopped updating. This was a result of an API token that needed to be refreshed every 90 days. I'd always handled it. Nobody else even knew it existed. Jake kept me updated through texts. He wasn't asking for help. He understood why I left, but he wanted me to know what was happening. I appreciated the play-by-play. Kevin just spent 45 minutes screaming at the consultants. It was glorious. Dad is in his office with the door closed. Haven't seen him come out in 3 hours. The consultants are talking about bringing in a forensic data recovery team. They think we might have been hacked. They hadn't been hacked. They just finally realized that maybe the guy who built everything from scratch knew things that weren't written down anywhere. My phone was blowing up. Dad, Kevin, HR, coworkers I barely knew. Everyone wanted to know where I was and why I wasn't helping. I ignored all of it. On day 4, Dad showed up at Rachel's apartment. I watched him through the peephole, knocking and calling my name for 20 minutes before finally. He left a handwritten note under the door. David, please call me. We can work this out. Dad. I threw the note away. Day 5, Kevin sent me an email threatening legal action for sabotage and theft of company property. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend who laughed and said they had nothing. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I just left. The fact that I was the only one who knew how things worked wasn't my problem. I hadn't deleted anything, hadn't damaged anything, hadn't taken anything that belonged to the company. I just stopped showing up. Day 6, the company's main production server crashed. This was the big one, the server that hosted all their client applications. Without it, half their customer base had no access to the software they were paying for. The crash happened because of a memory management issue I'd set up a monitoring alert for years ago. The alert had been going to my email, my personal email, because I'd never trusted anyone else to respond to it properly. When I left, the alerts kept coming, but nobody was there to see them. I watched the emails roll in as the server slowly degraded over 72 hours before finally giving up. Jake texted me in a panic. David, everything is on fire. Kevin's been in Dad's office screaming for 2 hours. The consultants are saying they can't recover the system without the encryption keys. Nobody knows where they are. I knew where they were. They were in a password manager that only I had access to. A password manager secured by credentials that existed solely in my memory. Day 7, Dad called. I actually answered this time. David, his voice was hoarse. He sounded like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk. We talked plenty. You made your thoughts about me very clear. I was wrong. About Kevin. About the restructuring. About everything. Please. The company is falling apart. We need your help. Sounds like you should call those consultants Kevin hired. They're professionals, right? David, please, I'm begging you. Name your price. My price? Whatever you want. Your old position back. Double your salary. VP title. Anything. Just come back and fix this. I let the silence stretch out for a long time. Long enough that I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end, waiting. I don't want my old position back, Dad. Then what do you want? 50% of the company. He laughed, then realized I wasn't joking. That's insane. That's my life's work. I can't just give away half of it. Then good luck with your server recovery. I hear the consultants are making great progress. David, be reasonable. I'll give you 25%. That's more than generous for your age and experience. 50%. And Kevin goes, completely out. No position, no office, no involvement. Clean break. I can't fire your brother. He's family. So am I. But that didn't stop you from calling me a failure who should know his place. Silence. Long, painful silence. 50% and Kevin out. Final offer. You have until midnight to decide. After that, I'm booking a flight to Seattle. I have 3 job offers waiting and I haven't even started looking seriously. I hung up. The next 18 hours were interesting. I know this because Jake kept me updated in real time. The consultants quit, just walked out. Said the situation was beyond their capability to resolve without access credentials they couldn't obtain. They also mentioned something about not wanting to be associated with the company when it collapsed. 2 major clients terminated their contracts. 3 employees resigned because they couldn't do their jobs without functioning systems. The company's bank called about a missed loan payment that had been scheduled through an automated system nobody could access. Kevin apparently had a complete meltdown in the parking lot, screaming about how this was all my fault and how I'd planned this from the beginning. Security had to escort him off the premises. At 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. 50%. Dad's voice was broken. Kevin's out. Whatever you want, just please come back. I want it in writing. Lawyer drafted agreement, signed and notarized before I touch a single keyboard. We don't have time for that. The servers? Then I guess the servers stay down. I'll wait for the paperwork. David, please. We're losing everything. Midnight, Dad. Papers ready by noon tomorrow or the deal's off. I hung up again. At 11:58 a.m. the next day, I received an email with 3 attachments. A stock transfer agreement giving me 50% ownership of Johnson Industrial Solutions, Kevin's termination letter, and a formal apology letter from my father acknowledging his errors in judgment regarding my contributions to the company. My lawyer reviewed everything. It was legitimate. I drove to the office at 2 p.m., walked past the empty reception desk, past the darkened workstation, past the stressed-out employees who looked at me like I was either their savior or their executioner. Dad was waiting in his office. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. Kevin was there too, packing personal items into a cardboard box while shooting daggers at me with his eyes. David, Dad stood up. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. I was blind. I let my desire to see Kevin succeed cloud my judgment about who was really holding this company together. Save it. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to fix the mess you created. Kevin looked up from his box. This isn't over. You think you won? But you just destroyed this family? No, Kevin. You and Dad destroyed this family. I just stopped letting you destroy me along with it. He grabbed his box and walked out without another word. I never saw him at the office again. I sat down at my old workstation and got to work. It took me 4 hours to restore basic functionality, another 6 to get all systems fully operational. By midnight, Johnson Industrial Solutions was running again. But things were different now. Very different. Over the next 3 months, I implemented changes I'd been advocating for years. Proper documentation for all systems. Redundant access credentials held by multiple trusted employees. Training programs so I wasn't a single point of failure anymore. Professional IT staff who actually understood our infrastructure. I also restructured the company. Dad stepped back to an advisory role. I became CEO. We cut the dead weight, focused on our core competencies, and started rebuilding relationships with the clients we'd lost. Kevin tried to sue for wrongful termination. His lawyer laughed him out of the office when he reviewed the situation. You can't sue for wrongful termination when your termination was part of a negotiated agreement to save a company you helped destroy. The lawsuit attempt was actually pretty funny. Kevin hired some ambulance chaser attorney who sent us a cease and desist letter claiming I had coerced Dad into signing the agreement under duress. My lawyer responded with a 12-page breakdown of everything Kevin had done to damage the company, including the failed cloud migration, the lost clients, and the security vulnerabilities his consultants had created. We also included transcripts of Kevin's parking lot meltdown that several employees had recorded on their phones. The lawsuit disappeared within 2 weeks. Never heard another word about it. What surprised me most was how quickly the company culture changed once Kevin was gone. Employees who had been walking on eggshells suddenly started speaking up in meetings. Ideas that had been shot down for years got implemented. Morale went through the roof. Jake told me that on Kevin's last day, someone had left a cake in the break room with a note that said, "Good riddance." Nobody ever figured out who did it, but I had my suspicions. The clients we'd lost during the crisis were harder to win back. Two of them had signed with competitors and weren't interested in returning. But the third one, a manufacturing company we'd worked with for 6 years, agreed to give us another chance after I personally flew out to their headquarters and walked them through everything that had happened. "Your brother really screwed you over," their CTO said after I finished explaining. "He did, but he's gone now, and I'm making sure nothing like this ever happens again." We got their contract back, signed a 3-year extension on better terms than before. The financial recovery took about 4 months. Between the lost clients, the emergency consulting fees, and the damage to our reputation, we'd taken a serious hit. I had to personally guarantee a bridge loan to keep payroll running while we rebuilt. But we did rebuild, stronger than before. I brought in new people, competent people. Patricia as CTO, a CFO named William, who had actual financial experience instead of just a business degree and family connection. A sales director named Samantha, who closed more deals in her first quarter than Kevin had closed in 2 years. We also invested heavily in documentation and training. I never wanted to be a single point of failure again. Not because I was planning to leave, but because I finally understood that a company built around one person's knowledge isn't really a company. It's a liability. By month 6, we were profitable again. By month 9, we were posting record revenues. By month 12, we had more clients than we'd ever had before. The turnaround got noticed. Industry publications wrote about our Phoenix from the Ashes story. A podcast invited me on to talk about resilience and leadership. I declined the podcast but appreciated the recognition. TLDR. Spent 8 years building my family's tech company. Dad promoted my useless brother over me and called me a failure who should know his place. I quit, taking all the system access with me. When everything crashed, I demanded 50% ownership to come back. Now I run the company and my brother sells cars. Update. Hey Reddit. It's been about 6 months since I posted this, and people have been asking for an update. The company just had its best quarter ever. We brought in a new CTO who I actually respect, a woman named Patricia, who spent 15 years at a Fortune 100 company before deciding she wanted to work somewhere smaller. We've landed 3 major contracts this year, hired 12 new employees, and expanded into 2 new markets. The biggest contract was with an automotive parts manufacturer based out of Detroit. They'd been shopping for a new software solution for over a year, and every major competitor had pitched them. When they heard about our turnaround story, they reached out directly, said they appreciated a company that had been through the fire and come out stronger. That contract alone is worth more than our entire revenue from 2 years ago. Rachel and I got married last month. Small ceremony, just close friends and her family. Dad was the only one from my side who came. Kevin wasn't invited. The wedding was actually perfect. We did it at a botanical garden about an hour outside the city. 50 people, good food, great weather, no drama. Rachel's family is completely normal, which after my family feels almost surreal. Her dad walked her down the aisle. Her mom cried happy tears. Her sisters gave actually heartfelt toasts. Nobody tried to make it about themselves or start a fight. Dad behaved himself. He sat in the back row, kept to himself, and left right after the reception started winding down. He shook my hand before he left and said he was proud of me. I just nodded. Speaking of Kevin, I heard through the grapevine that he tried to start his own consulting business after getting fired. Some kind of business development service where he'd help startups find investors. It lasted about 4 months before he ran out of Dad's money to burn. Apparently the investors he was connecting weren't real, and the startups figured that out pretty quickly. One of the startups actually threatened to sue him for fraud. Kevin had been taking a finder's fee for introductions to investors who didn't exist. The whole thing collapsed when someone actually Googled one of the investors Kevin had mentioned and found nothing. He's at a car dealership now, selling used trucks from what I heard, making about $40,000 a year. A far cry from the VP salary he thought he deserved. Dad officially retired last month. He signed over his remaining shares to me as part of a buyout agreement we'd been negotiating. I now own 73% of Johnson Industrial Solutions. He moved to Arizona with Mom. Before he left, we had dinner together, just the 2 of us. He told me that watching me take control of the company was the proudest he'd ever been of me. Then he apologized again for how he'd treated me all those years. I always thought Kevin needed more help because he struggled more, he said. I didn't realize I was just making him weaker while ignoring the son who was actually building something. I appreciated the apology, but I also told him that apologies don't change history. They just acknowledge it. He nodded like he understood. Mom still tries to arrange family dinners where Kevin happens to show up. I've stopped attending those. Last Thanksgiving, she called me crying because I wouldn't come. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. Kevin reached out once, about 3 months ago, a long email apologizing for any misunderstandings and asking if there might be a place for him at the company again. He'd been fired from the car dealership for falsifying sales records and was apparently struggling to find work. I didn't respond. Jake showed me Kevin's LinkedIn profile recently. He's listed himself as a business development consultant with expertise in corporate turnaround strategies. The irony almost made me laugh. One more thing worth mentioning. Last week, our biggest competitor reached out about acquiring Johnson Industrial Solutions. They offered $42 million. I told them no, not because I couldn't use the money, but because I built this company from the ground up, and nobody's taking it from me. Not my brother, not my father, not some corporate buyout firm looking for a bargain. This is mine. I earned it, and I'm keeping it. That's it for now, Reddit. Thanks for following along. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.